and then edit this later, I guess. Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We're here in what's probably the beginning of finals week for a good amount of you and semis for the rest. If you're still listening, you're either just like a masochist and want to remember your dying teams, or you're doing well. And good luck for the rest of the season for you guys. Unsurprisingly, this is coming out on Monday. You guys can tell that we've once again had recording issues. It's just we've really not had time to find a decent shot to record over these last couple of weeks. I actually think, funnily enough, that after this week, it's going to get a little bit easier. But after this week is the end of fantasy. So not great timing for the podcast, unfortunately, but that's just kind of how it is. And obviously with Gamby not joining me once again, it's just been tough for us, unfortunately. And tough for my teams in general. I just got destroyed in most of my semifinals. Lots of 6-4 losses or surprises in general. I'm likely to have my dominant dynasty team, which went undefeated in the regular season, get knocked out in semis. For some reason, that league is running Wednesday to Tuesday, so I've got 2 more days to make up the difference, but it's not looking great. And the main reason is going to be Mackenzie Weegar, which is hilarious because this entire season I've been talking about how Weegar doesn't make any sense and is unsustainably high, which I still think he is, and he still doesn't make any sense, but good for bangers leagues. So I guess that's joke's on me, right? Anyway, going into the injury report, we have a lot of people coming out. I'm sure some of you are already aware of most of these. Let's start with Antti Raanta. He's only kind of on here. I mean, he's not super relevant because he only played for like a game before he was out again, but day-to-day with an upper body injury. Typical Raanta story, unfortunately. He just can't stay healthy. Conor Garland is effectively out for season. All these guys are effectively out for season for the most part for fantasy. But week to week with lower body injury. Excited to see what happens with him next season, honestly. I think he's going to get drafted relatively high, I would think. But I could also see him being, one of our sleeper picks for next season. Peter Mrazek is back to being down with a lower body injury. Nedeljkovic needs a few more starts. I think it's 3 more starts by the end of the regular season to not be an unrestricted free agent. And considering how well he's played, he's going to get those 3 starts. So it's kind of good news in the form of bad news for Nedeljkovic owners. But speaking of good news in the way of bad news, Mikko Rantanen is probably a false positive COVID protocol, but he is not traveling with the team, so I wouldn't expect to see him playing again until Friday, meaning he's going to miss the 2 away games coming up here against the Sharks. Why am I blanking on if it is Sharks games or not? No, the Sharks games are the home games. So he's playing in St. Louis and Vegas. Well, he's not. So that's good news for Burakovsky owners. He is the ad, I think, for those 2 games. I assume on Friday and Saturday against the Sharks at home that Rantanen comes back and we see Burakovsky kind of fall off. So be careful if you have Burakovsky. I wouldn't necessarily hold him. Especially, I wouldn't play him on Saturday, which is going to be a tough day in general because, 30 teams play that day. But just be cognizant of what's going on with him. Jonas Korpisalo is out day-to-day with a lower body injury. John Klingberg is day-to-day with lower body injury, which makes things interesting finally for Miro Heiskanen. Dylan Larkin is out for season with an upper body injury. I mean, out for season isn't saying a whole lot, but yeah. Tomas Tatar is down with a lower body injury. We've got Druin day-to-day with an illness of some kind. Carey Price is day-to-day with unconcussion protocol. Jacob Trouba is day-to-day with an upper body injury. Matt Murray is day-to-day with a lower body injury. Shane Gostisbehere is day-to-day with a knee thing. Colton Parayko is day-to-day with an upper body injury. I thought he got healthy again, but maybe he's out again. Vince Dunn is day-to-day. Zach Hyman is week-to-week with a knee injury. Alex Ovechkin, this one hit me particularly hard and still is day-to-day with a lower body injury. And then we have Nikolai Ehlers, unfortunately, out for season with an upper body injury. Too bad because he was having a seriously amazing season. But on the flip side of that, on the return side, we've got Blake Wheeler coming back, Pavel Zacha, Jesper Bratt, Eli Tovanen, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Mackenzie Blackwood, and William Nylander all coming back from various things. And All right. So moving on, because again, we're talking about week previews here where there is no such thing as long-term anymore. So obviously you're not going to have long-term ads in general, but also some of the drop candidates, I think, are going to be schedule related. So they're basically like the Blue Jackets, I think, in general. If you have Blue Jacket players and Calgary players, those are the couple that I'm really looking at. The Blue Jackets, you're probably, given the fact that there's nobody really amazing on that team to play anymore, you're probably not going to start them on Saturday, which means you're only going to get one start this week from them. You likely will get an additional start coming into, or not an additional start. You'll get a decent week out of them next week, but I don't think it's worth holding it over this week for basically anybody in the Blue Jackets. You can make an argument for like a Seth Jones, maybe, or a goalie, maybe, but probably not. Calgary, however, it's kind of even worse. They've got a pretty mediocre schedule this week and then only 2 games next week. Really, really tough to find places for them. It really makes you think like guys like Matt Tkachuk and Sean Monahan that have been struggling recently anyway. It's hard to argue for them. If you can play them on the couple games that they have this week, maybe on Monday and then you let go of them, like today rather. But it's hard to argue keeping them, honestly. And they should be maybe not the top of your list, but they should be guys you should be looking at because they're just not going to help you that much for the rest of the season. Also over on Boston, we have Mike Riley and Nick Ritchie. Both of them are droppable now. Mike Riley is off both power plays. We've got Nick Ritchie, who's still on power play 1, but he's playing very low minutes in general. And Boston only has 3 games this week, so not a super strong hold compared to some other options. And then Ryan Pollock. I was surprised to see Pollock is still so highly rostered, considering he basically hasn't been good for the majority of the season. Like, he does okay with his peripheral numbers, but kind of not enough to keep up with kind of similar players in that vein, considering the power play just never really clicked with him. All right, so going over the week preview, there's really like Columbus is the one that stands out, right? They only got 2 games. One's against Detroit. That's a great start on Tuesday, I guess. And then they have the super heavy game night, 15 games being played on Saturday against Carolina. You're probably not starting anybody from the Blue Jackets in that game, most likely. I think kind of the strongest teams for this week, there's a bunch of teams that have pretty good schedules, that like Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. Now, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday are all pretty good days in general. They all have 8 games or less. 8 games being like considered sort of an on night, but you're probably not going to have bench issues on any one of these days. So picking up players from teams that play on any of these days are good. Even Thursday isn't super bad. There's 10 games being played, which is fairly light, all things considered. Saturday's impossible. And then on Sunday, there's just Tampa and Detroit playing and nobody else. So it's an awkward week. But really, that Saturday is the difference maker, and we're going to see a lot of drops happen on Friday to pick up somebody from either Detroit or Tampa. So it's going to be funny to watch, relatively speaking, like guys like Zadina and like Barre Brûlé and those types of guys kind of spike up on Sunday. So don't be too alarmed when you see that. That doesn't mean they're long-term holds. It just means people are scrambling on Sunday to try to save the rest of their season. I'm not going to, like, there's so many teams that have decent schedules. I think an interesting option for this week would be to take a player from either Vancouver, St. Louis, or the Oilers who play 3 games all Thursday or earlier, and then you can drop and get somebody on Friday. That's if you only have one streamer spot and you're trying to maximize. The more streamer spots you have, the more you can open things up. There's essentially, in my opinion, there's like half the teams, maybe even more than half the teams, have 3 games that you're going to be able to play, not including that Saturday. So it's pretty wide open as far as where you can get good starts. I think that Anaheim and LA both have very good schedules because they play each other. So there's kind of sneaky value to be had on those 2 teams, although it's kind of hard to find the players. So moving into kind of targets. I had a couple more drop candidates, by the way. Jack Hughes, Travis Konecny, and Matt Dumba also are not super strong, I think, rest of the season. As far as like, I guess, short-term targets, Andre Burakovsky, I already mentioned kind of in the injury report. He's still 40% rostered, which seems low to me. I think by the time Rantanen comes back, I think he's an immediate drop unless he somehow stays on top power play. I can't imagine he stays top line. I think he's going to go back to where he was, and that he makes me feel a little nervous for people that grab him. Monday, Wednesday, he has strong nights probably, and then hold him through Friday, Saturday, and wind up seeing not so good results against an easier team on paper. So just be ready to drop him on Friday if something jumps out at you. Sam Bennett, center, left wing, right wing, 49% rostered. He is hard to ignore, especially in bangers leagues. He brings PIMs, shots, hits. He's been scoring goals. He's playing top power play now. He's got a pretty good second line. He's man, it's a real transition for what we've seen from him in Calgary, for what we're seeing from him in Florida now. Jamie Oleksiak for bangers leagues has been quite good, putting up really consistent hits and shots peripherals. He also sprinkles in blocks. He's a pretty good all-around candidate, and he's actually been getting some assists here and there as well. Not really known for that, but the extra shots are a nice little boost I didn't expect to get when I picked him up. So it's nice to see him kind of doing that full multi-cat thing. He also gets some PIMs here and there. I think Ricard Raquel, sitting left wing, right wing, 23%, once again finds himself on like a streamer kind of list here. I think he's the best option. You can make an argument for Max Comtois over on Anaheim as the best option, as somebody to stream for this week. There doesn't seem to be anybody else that's super interesting, unfortunately. It's kind of those two guys. Even if you're digging deep, there's really not been anybody standing out in Anaheim. So it's hard to find anybody in really deep leagues to kind of fill that gap, unfortunately. I think in LA, the one that I would pick again is Alex Iafallo, left wing, 11% rostered. He's kind of just the go-to boring pick, but he is going to play Anaheim over and over and over. He's been shooting more than usual lately, and he plays top line, top power play. I think in really deep leagues, Trevor Moore is fairly interesting. He has been up and down this season, but he does tend to score goals when he does something, and he takes a decent amount of shots. Also, Athanasiou is semi-interesting in really deep leagues as well, as he seems to be playing with Kopitar every now and again on that top power play. Not really those latter two guys are not really guys I'd necessarily target. I think Iafallo is the one that you're looking for at low percentages. But if you're going really deep, Trevor Moore's 0% rostered, so he can be interesting there. I also have Calvin Peterson here, goalie, 24% rostered. I figured he was going to get 3 starts this week. It turns out he probably isn't. It looks like Quick is locked in for tonight, this Monday night. So that kind of throws a wrench into the whole plan. But he's still good. He should still get 2 starts. Unfortunately, they have a back-to-back, so I don't see him getting 3 now. It would have been nice for him to get 3, but at 24% rostered against the Ducks, that's about as good as you're going to be able to find for that roster percentage. Alex Nedeljkovic is another good option. I know that Reimer is locked in for this week, for this game on Monday. But if Mrazek stays out for any period of time, we already know that they're almost certainly going to start Nedeljkovic 3 more times sometime during the rest of their games. It could be all 3 this week with Mrazek out. No real need to rush him back, and no real downside to playing Nedeljkovic as extra games if he's playing better than Reimer. So if you're picking up Nedeljkovic, you're hoping that Reimer essentially gets shelled in their game tonight against Dallas. But we'll see. I think I'm fairly optimistic that he gets at least 2 and hopefully 3 starts is the answer there. Got a couple extra ones here with Frank Vetrano is getting a look top line with Barkov in Florida. He's similar. I think he's like a lesser version of Sam Bennett for what we're getting out of him. Hits, PIMs, shots, sometimes points. Doesn't look like he's going to be playing top power play, but even strength line with Barkov is definitely a good place to be. And then lastly, for that another deeper league banger type, Michael Bunting finds his way onto this list again. He gets 2 Sharks games earlier in the week, Monday and Wednesday, so those are good matchups for him. And then he winds up on Friday against Vegas, Saturday also against Vegas, but I assume most everybody will not be playing him on Saturday, as they'll have better options. But he makes for a decent streamer this week, I think. And that pretty much does it for my ad recommendations. We're going to be back later this week for 10 takes, probably on Thursday or Friday. But at this point, like 10 takes is kind of whenever we can do them because they're not super prescient on what's going on right then. So we'll see. I assume that'll come out on Friday, and then if you're still alive on next week, we'll see. I don't have any of my leagues going through. Well, actually, my Dynasty League does go through next week. So maybe never mind. I take it back. I have one league going through to May 8th. We already know that Yahoo is taking the stance that they will not extend the season to take the buffer week into account, which is an interesting choice. I actually think I don't know. I think it's probably the right one. But it would have been nice to know that way beforehand, as opposed to like a couple days before it matters, because, teams that are looking ahead would be stashing guys on Vancouver for that extra week, especially in roto leagues and stuff like that, where you can get a bunch of extra starts that didn't seem like you're going to be able to get. But I digress. That will do it. So as always, thanks for listening.